Hi, I'm Len Matheson.
And I'm Roy Matheson.
We're here to talk to you today about the Employability Rating Scale and why it's important for occupational therapists to understand. OTs consider 5 levels of employability as they take their clients through the stage model of rehabilitation on an interdisciplinary basis. OTs are extremely important, showing up at stages 2 through 7 as crucial contributors to the team's information. In fact, OTs are team leaders in stages 3 through 5, addressing functional limitations, occupational disability, and employment feasibility. And OT involvement should begin early. My first job as a pre-vocational counselor, working with OTs at Rancho Los Amigos Hospital, the parents of our clients had lots of questions about their child's future. We needed to give them a framework that they could use to track their child's progress. And of course, the same framework applies to adults that OTs are working with. The Employability Rating Scale is what employers use whether you're a retail salesperson, a construction carpenter or a painter, a studio musician, a physician, or a truck driver. And this standard is that with or without reasonable accommodation, the worker is able to safely and dependably complete the essential functions of the job sought or held. We now have a new standard that we add to that. Productivity and errors are comparable to similarly situated workers. And this is why I've asked my brother Roy Matheson to come in and talk with us about the ADA standards. He's a certified ADA specialist who consults with industry and with rehabilitation professionals on how to manage reasonable accommodation. Now, you've explained to me, Roy, that this issue of similarly situated workers is important for OTs to understand. Can you say something more about that?
Similarly situated is a facet of the law, ADA Title I, that ensures that people that are new to a particular position or a new task are given a level playing field, if you will, with other workers that may have more experience. It recognizes the newness of the person to that particular task.
So this would allow a person who's been off of work for a few years to come back and have productivity and errors that aren't at the level of a person who's been, employed for like 5 years in that particular job. They could start out at a lower level and gradually work up because people who are similarly situated would include people who haven't been working on that job for 5 years. Is that what you mean?
That's right. People will have the right to gain in productivity and to minimize errors as they gain experience. They should not be negatively judged by a lack of experience in that particular situation. A similarly situated worker implies that the individual being graded is compared to people with the same amount of experience in the particular job and doing that particular task.
Now, when we talk about different levels of accommodated employment, we've got 3 different levels that we look at: self-managed and coached and sheltered. Can you say more about what we mean by accommodated employment, Roy?
Accommodated employment is a process that the worker and management go through to remove the barriers to successful employment.
So is it a negotiation between the worker who's returning and management? Is that the idea?
ADA Title I has what's called an interactive process for reasonable accommodation. And that's a process where the employee and the employer sit down and identify the roadblocks to success for that particular individual. If a particular disability or the effect of a disability can be remediated, that's what happens in the reasonable accommodation process.
That's the sort of thing that occupational therapists can be involved in.
Yes, the occupational therapist brings a lot to that discussion, and wise management will look to an occupational therapist to come up with the solutions that will make this situation work.
So if a boss moves forward without the OT's involvement, are they kind of skating on thin ice that they're just shooting from the hip themselves? And if they bring the OT in, do they have like more credibility if problems arise? Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
The EEOC actually gives credit to an employer that looks to outside experts to help them find effective solutions.
So the EEOC is a federal agency, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, that administers this law?
Yeah, the EEOC is tasked to teach employers how to do this, but then to also respond to any complaints or issues about employers that are not following the processes that have been laid out. And in looking at the actions of an employer, if the employer has looked to an outside expert like an OT, they actually get credit in sticky situations.
Now, Roy, your professional certification is ADAC. Would you explain what that means?
ADAC stands for ADA Coordinator, Americans with Disabilities Act Coordinator. And we're the people that have been trained by the federal government to work with employers, work with attorneys, work with physicians, and work with OTs to make sure that ADA Title I is successful.
So, Roy, if an employer gets in trouble by having a complaint lodged against them with the EEOC, an ADAC like yourself is called in, is that the way it works?
About half of my practice is helping employers that have somehow had trouble with the law.
So you come in and you take a look at whether or not the employer has, for instance, involved an OT in the conversation between the worker and the employer to help set up things properly. Is that what you would look for?
Yes, I look to see if an OT's been involved, and if not, I look to see if an OT should be brought in at that time to help the employer prepare to defend their action.
So, Roy, let's take a look at the different levels of accommodated employment. Self-managed.
Self-managed accommodation is the employee taking responsibility for implementing whatever the agreement is about the accommodation. They basically run their own show.
And then take a look at coached. Tell us what that is.
Being coached or the coaching process calls on somebody other than just the employee to acclimate the employee to their current situation.
So it's not self-managed anymore, but it's not, a coach doesn't come in and do the job for the person. I guess that's what you're saying. They're guiding the person to do the job.
Right. The coach assists the employee to move up to self-manage. If there needs to be some refinement to whatever the agreement was, or showing how the employee should be executing a demand, that's the job of the coach.
So one of the things that might happen then, a person gets set up to do self-management but begins to have trouble, a coach might be brought in, like an OT be brought in temporarily to provide some coaching, some guidance to that person?
That's exactly what happens. The OT provides the guidance.
Okay, let's talk about sheltered. So sheltered employment requires more than coaching.
A sheltered workshop is a special situation where the Department of Labor has come to an agreement with an employer or an agency that allows folks to not be up to the similarly situated level for employment.
And then finally, let's talk about unable. When all is said and done, there are some people who just can't get back to work.
That's true. There are folks that have cognitive issues and/or physical issues and potentially other issues.
In my experience, one of the big issues with this is safety. I used to run a sheltered workshop, and one of the things that we had as a basic issue was even if the person had a very low level of productivity, as long as they were safe in the workshop, we worked with the person, and we were glad to have them there. But once safety began to be a problem, we couldn't really continue to have people in the workshop.
ADA Title I includes language that says that the employer has the right to a situation where everybody employed is not a direct threat to self or others.
And so we have graded each of these 5 levels of employability in terms of the performance of the person on the DCAT, the Dynamic Complex Assembly task. This grew out of some work that we did in my lab at the program in occupational therapy at the Washington University School of Medicine in St. Louis. The idea with the DCAT is that it helps occupational therapists and others differentiate among the 3 levels that are required for the person to be successful in terms of reasonable accommodation. If you want more information about the DCAT, contact my daughter-in-law, Erin Matheson, at mathesondevelopment.com. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Thanks for your interest. Please subscribe and click the bell so that we can let you know about new things that are coming along. Take care now.